This is SEL0220 here for a brand new movie review. This time around, I'm here to do the movie review for Noah. Now, this interesting epic is directed by the director of The Black Swan, the director of so many other interesting Academy Award-winning movies. But it stars Russell Crowe, Jennifer Connelly, Emma Watson, Logan, forgot his last name, but it's an all-star cast, generally all around. But it's taking the chapters from Genesis and internalizing it as an adaptation. And again, quote unquote, adaptation, meaning this is not word for word on the biblical lines of what the Bible says, King James or not. So if you go into this movie, make sure you know that, because before I even go into the review, a lot of people that have gone into it, they've had their own self-righteous opinions, or like they don't like it or they do like it based on the fact of them knowing or not knowing that this is adaptation, meaning that they take different things that happen in the course of Noah's life in the book of Genesis, and they've personalized them, dramatified them to relate them on an adaptation level. And that's the reason why I said make sure you take that into mind when you go in. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and go over just the baseline synopsis of what Noah is about. So, a man is chosen by God to undertake a momentous mission of rescue before an apocalyptic flood destroys the world. So, taking from, like I said, Genesis. And if you would like to know any more about the actual story of Noah, I would love to go through that with you in my other channel, Super SEL0220. I actually really want to go through chapter for chapter and actually do a reading, an actual study of what really actually took place with that story and the epicness that story by itself was. So anyway, going into the movie, thinking about the scope of this movie and the visuals and the music, it was phenomenal. I cannot front, I cannot stress it enough. The way that they did just the beginning, they showed a kind of rendition of the beginning of how the earth was formed, how in the beginning where God said, "Let there be light," like it was visually stunning. And I mean, they left it so it looked like it could be like taken over time. Like, okay, it wasn't like an instant, but then there are certain elements within the movie that things happen like that, spontaneous, like a tree might grow spontaneously from like I'm not gonna spoil anything, but just the way that they did the beginning scene of how the earth began and how life started, it was just beautiful, you know? Even everything from the Adam and Eve to the serpent in the Garden of Eden, but just when the whole story even started, like you could tell like everything in the world in and of itself was reaching like this apocalyptic level. And it's like when you look at the post-apocalyptic movies like now, like Book of Eli, or what else? Shoot, so many different movies that. Even Dawn of the Dead, like when you see the world, you can tell like everything is messed up. And they took the storyline off of what happened after Cain and Abel, after the death of the brother. That's when everything kind of split apart, and the world in and of itself was just brought into this chaotic cesspool of sin. And it showed in everything in it. I was looking, I was like, dang, it's the end of the world, but it's back then. And it felt like that. And I mean, it's hard to put that on paper because it's not that many chapters that go through this story, but the way that they depicted it, it looked very interesting to me on an audio-visual level. Now, the director, Darren Aronofsky, like he's synonymous with having a lot of heavy visuals. If any of y'all have seen like Requiem for a Dream or Pi or Black Swan or even The Fountain, those visuals in The Fountain were just phenomenal of how they actually showed the scope of different things. This one took it to a whole other level. Like this is like a grand scale, because when the water hits and when the rains fall, or when you see different things like happen elemental, like with the animals, Now, I will say though, with the animals, I have a little bit of critique because with the animals, some of it looked a little too cartoonish and too unbelievable to just happen like that, but it showed a really good way of how it happened, which I'll go into that when I talk about the story a little bit later. Anyway, I digress. With the visual effects on top of how the sound was, now at first I didn't like the sound. I thought it was like, what in the world is this score? It didn't make any sense, but then it was a build up, there was a tension that was going on that it was interesting to watch cinematically, and they did a great job with the orchestrated score for this one, and the visual effects were just on point. It was amazing, to be honest with you. Certain things that they were doing with the flood and with death that was happening, or even like the practical effects when somebody would get killed, like it was believable. It was very well done. And I mean, for him to go and do something like this, I mean, it was just a different level to me. I really liked it. So the visual effects, I would have to give the visual effects at least a 9 out of 10, with the exception of how sometimes with, I think maybe not the snakes, but some of the animals looked very kind of like CG-ish, and they didn't feel real and authentic. And I thought that some of those, they could have used actual practical, like larger animals to try to weed their way out of it, and maybe use like green screen for some stuff. But I'm not a director yet, so I can't do anything about that. But that would be my only critique with that. Going into this story, or I'll go to the actors first. So taking off the gate, you got Russell Crowe as Noah. Now, it starts off when Noah is just a boy, and what happens to his father, which none of this is actually, I mean, when you read the word about what's going on, it talks about like their lifespan, how long they lived. It doesn't say how they died necessarily. Even like Noah's grandfather, who is played by Anthony Hopkins, which is an amazing actor, and he's very well in this one. Like it's interesting. Like it shows he's very different and very mystical and very spiritual, almost kind of like on a prophet level. But anyway, I'm not gonna go into all that. But it was very well done how they progressed Russell Crowe's character into becoming the man that he is, from the point when he starts to be a man from his dad all the way to the end where he's trying to progress that to his sons. And I mean, I felt like Russell Crowe did an amazing job with the script that they gave him. I thought he did an amazing job with Superman. I thought that he did a great job in Beautiful Minds. I mean, he has the acting level of a pro. I mean, I didn't know he could sing up until Les Mis, but he even did like a small song that he had sung to a young Emma Watson's character in this one, and it was just very heartfelt. But this Noah is not to be trifled with. If you come at him or come at his family a certain kind of way, he will take you out. He will strike you down. But it's like, even beginning, the way his character is, you can see the humbleness on him, you can see the love in his heart for his family. And when he is given this vision of how Darren Aronofsky depicts it, and after he sees like the flood, and he only sees glimpses and flashes, on a realistic level, when somebody sees something to that level, it will change you, because it's not just like having a dream that you kind of wake up from. A vision in and of itself is something, it's almost like a memory that's implanted here, and you can't get rid of it because you know it's about to be a reality, and everything around you is showing you that's nothing on the contrary. It's gonna happen. And so you see his character from the beginning being a humble kid, to grooming his children, to being a loving father, to the world's about to end. What am I going to do? My life is not my own. This is more so about the animals, preserving the animals, because they were pure. Like, they did not fall into sin. They reserved themselves, you know? And it's just like, after a certain point, he forgets his family. He forgets the love for his family. He forgets the need to preserve his family. He's willing to really sacrifice his family. And like, Russell Crowe's character plays it so well, because he's so on point with every single moment, like even to the point where he's in the dirt towards the end, and you just see his character is like hit rock bottom, you know. But it was very well acted. I have to give like Russell Crowe credit where the credit's due, regardless of it being like biblical, like word for word how it's supposed to be. Like, I mean, it was very well done. Another thing I was gonna say about the CG, there was some fallen angels that were considered like kind of like rock creatures, and with that, it kind of was like a Lord of the Ring-esque kind of like feature. And I mean, I thought that was very intriguing and exciting, but it wasn't very accurate, and it kind of was distracting for me. But I understood why and how they did it, you know, especially if somebody doesn't know. But I couldn't stress enough to go into the word and actually read it for yourself so you can actually see what it's really about. And again, like I said, the other channel, I'll go over all that if y'all would love to. Jennifer Connelly, I thought that as Noah's wife, like she was amazing. I mean, at first she played the normal wife and just in awe of everything that he was dealing with, and then what was taking the family through, and to the point that by the end of it, when there's a scene where they're on the ark, Jennifer Connelly, she acts her tail off. And I forget that Jennifer Connelly was in Requiem for a Dream. Like, I forget these things. But she does some of her best acting in this, like, I think I've ever seen. I mean, I totally forgot about the Hulk. Anyway, who's other actors that I'd have to say? Emma Watson. This girl, she proved herself to me. I mean, when I saw Spring Breakers, not Spring Breakers, but the Bling Bling Ring, whatever, trailer, I was like, man, what in the world is this? But then I looked at, what was that movie? Perks of a Wallflower. I thought she did a great job in that. Of course, I've seen the Harry Potters, but she has very good acting ability. And this is like a different level for her because she plays the role of one of Noah's adopted daughters, and it's just very interesting the way her character progresses with Noah's son. And I can't spoil anything, but by the end of it, she does some serious acting. She does some crying, she does some emoting. Like, the girl, she is amazing. Like, I have to give her credit as well. Logan Lehman, I'm sorry. He plays Percy Jackson. He's played the role of Bobby. He's played so many different roles. He's a great actor. His role was very interesting too. He was one of the sons that was he's coming into his own. Even at a young age, like they showed a certain scene with him where he was trying to understand life in and of itself. And like the older brother got it, but he really didn't. And it kind of carried throughout the whole film. And the way that Logan portrayed his character, it was like this unsureness and uneasiness about the world that Noah was portraying that everything was. It's like he had his own ideals of what things were supposed to be. And it was just interesting. Logan did a great job. I mean, other people I never heard of, Douglas Bluth, he did a great job. He played the older son. So many different characters, man. For me, I thought that who kind of stole the show the most was probably Emma Watson's character on top of course, Noah. Kurt Russell. Not Kurt Russell, but I'm sorry, Russell Crowe. I'm trying to think of any other characters that I thought that were really good. There's so many, man. And so many different people that they brought into the level, the scope of this. Who else? Anthony Hopkins' character. Of course, I told y'all he did a very good job with it. But Ray Winstone, that played the main villain, he was a trip. I mean, even as a youth, like, he was insane. He embodied the opposite end of walking by faith and not by sight. He walked by sight and not by faith. He walked by what he could take, not what he could give. And I mean, that's what he lived by. He was a patriot to that, you know. But he did a great job acting wise, and just he was a menacing villain. And I mean, the way that the things happen towards, like, you have to pay attention to how his character even progressed as well. But anyway, I thought the acting all around, I thought was a 10 at least. I mean, if I could give it a higher level, I would. Going into the story, now that's where things get so mixed shift for me personally, being Christian, because I'm like, just stick to the cards. But I can understand his need to make this an adaptation. I've heard that Darren is an atheist, so he doesn't believe necessarily in God, but I don't understand why he would undertake a role like this if he didn't understand or comprehend the story. Even the synopsis, I mean, he could have wrote in the synopsis, the creator, a man chosen by the creator, not by God, you know? And I mean, that was another thing. In the story, they called the creator, not God. And I mean, it might be because they didn't have a defining word for God or deity. But anyway, the story itself, it was very good narrative. I mean, it'd be a very good read. But you have to make sure that you create it as an adaptation. Like, I mean, to me, I thought that should have been at the title, said this is an adaptation. But going through, I mean, you know the story. I mean, you know that Noah builds an ark to preserve all the animals so that they can live and so that his family can be safe. But that is not what happens in this movie. I mean, from the beginning, you can tell that like Noah has a calling on his life, and he's different, you know. And I mean, he was preserved for a set reason, even though he didn't understand that necessarily himself. But he was always a man that went around and actually took time to enjoy the space, enjoy the flowers, enjoy the animals. He had an appreciation for the animals more so than he did for man, because it looked like man just was slaying everything. And I mean, you got Seth's kids, and then you got Cain's kids, from the standpoint of genealogy. And because of that, like, I think the way that they did it, they had Noah being the last in the line, and that was very intricate and it's very important, like biblically. But the way that they did it was very skewed. Anyway, I really enjoyed how they did the narrative of just everything. I mean, I felt like how they progressed his character, how they progressed what was happening, what it was doing to his mind, what all this weight was doing to him. And even when the water hit, you know, and Noah is fighting to save his family for the ark, and all the animals on it, it's just like, that's not where it stops. Like, what the real meat of the story to me is, what do you do for 40 days and 40 nights with all these animals on the ark? Everybody around you is dying. You are listening to death outside in the water, screams and hollers. How does that affect your mind as a man, as a father? Do you feel like you should be out there, or would life be better if we were out there? You know, like, it's better just for us to be gone, you know? And I mean, that begs the question on so many different levels with different parts of the Bible, where you think about, like, maybe people like Abraham, when he is taking his son to be sacrificed, like, what is going through his minds? I mean, the scriptures can only show you what is like plain and cut, and that's what you use as the guide and representation. But you can also internalize, like, man, the emotional turmoil that might be taking place, even though out of faith he knows, but what it would bring you through, you know. And I think that what Darren wanted to do, he wanted to show how this really affected him, and how this could drive a person to do these different things and interactions, and how it affect the family, what it would cause a rift in the family, or would it not, you know. Anyway, so the story, I would have to give the story maybe a 7 or 8 out of 10. I did enjoy it. It was an adaptation. I felt like they could have just done just a normal story, you know. But either way, I digress. I really enjoyed it, and I would highly recommend y'all at least giving it a check out. But if you're gonna check it out, at least go through the chapters in Genesis and get a feel for what the story is yourself, so you can have something concrete. But going into it knowing it's an adaptation, just as long as you have the knowledge, it's cool. So that concludes that review. I'm gonna do another review on Sabotage, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sam Worthington, so many different actors in that one, Terrence Howard. I saw that this weekend as well, so I'm gonna do a review on that in a short while. I'm gonna post that up tonight as well. Come this Friday, I'm gonna be looking at The Raid 2, sequel, follow-up to The Raid Redemption. Cannot wait for it. I cannot wait. And in addition to that, Captain America, woo! It's coming out soon. Also this Friday as well. Crap. Anyway, without further ado, that is my review on Noah. Y'all have a good night, good evening, good morning. Deuces. brains. Brains. All right. Let me see. There we go. All right. I gotta back you up a little bit. There we go. I can't believe I keep on messing this camera up. I hope y'all are enjoying these bloopers. That should be about right. All right, it's time again for a brand new movie review. This is SEL Duduro signing out. This is gonna be the best blooper ever. All right.